Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting presentation of Georgia-Cumberland Conference and the Kentucky-Tennessee Conference coming together to give you a communication department training. And tonight we have a topic called AI, the tool, the Cointelligence, and the cultural shift, a Christian perspective. And we're happy to have Dr. Michael Finch with us, who's a professor at Southern Adventist University. Welcome, Dr. Finch. It's a pleasure to have you this evening.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
And Dr. Finch, we are going to be talking about artificial intelligence and how it's transforming the way we communicate and work and live, bringing churches both new opportunities and challenges. And so we're excited to have you come on this evening and discuss that with us this evening. And I understand you're going to be drawing from presentations that you've delivered at universities, professional associations, and international conferences. And we're looking forward to exploring how AI's evolution from its history to practical tools like prompt engineering and image generation is redefining how people connect and how faith communities adapt in the midst of this technological revolution. It's a mouthful. There's so much going on in this brave new world of AI. And I just want to let everyone know that we're going to hear from Dr. Finch. He's going to give a presentation for approximately 3/4 of the hour, and then we'll have a time at the end for some Q&A. So we're looking forward to that. And that'll be an opportunity to ask some questions there at the end. So with that, Dr. Finch, the time is yours.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I'm actually just going to set a timer here going so I can see exactly how long I'm taking because I don't. You give a professor a podium and or a portal, and they can end up talking too much. But yeah, it's great to meet you. I'm looking forward to talking about artificial intelligence. Let's see a little bit about me. I did not grow up in the Adventist church, and I was actually a bit of a science fiction geek, I guess you could say. When I was a kid, I used to read all of my father's Isaac Asimov books and Larry Niven and Ursula Le Guin and all of the classic science fiction authors from before even my time. And that set in my imagination these ideas. But then, we also had the Jetsons and then the Terminator. And so artificial intelligence is actually something that has existed in theory for actually thousands of years. The Greeks had a myth of Talos. So Talos was an automaton or a bronze creature that automatically went around and guarded the island of Crete. So it's kind of an interesting thing that or the Jews had oh gosh, why do I want to call it a Balrog? That's a horrible name for it. Golem. Sorry, the Golem. So they had a clay being that would guard their villages in myth. So this concept, this idea has existed for a long time, but now we're living in an era where this actually is happening. So yeah, I've got some great material for you, and actually we've got some activities that you can maybe revisit, but some opportunities to apply some knowledge. So we're going to talk a little bit about what AI is doing to culture. So my area of research actually is not computer science, but it's actually an area called media ecology, or the effects of media on culture. And so I'll bring some of that to you, and then we'll start looking at some of the toys. So I tell my students, play with AI. That's the best way to interact with it, and you'll learn and grow from that. So yeah, if we could get into, yeah, there we go. All right, and actually this slide heading is something that I just used to present to the American Advertising Federation. Living in a world of AI natives, welcome to the future for those who grew up with dial-up. So I brought this up for those of you that are old like me, which I hate to say that I'm old these days, but we of course know what dial-up is. I talked about this with my students right here at Southern, and they asked me, they're like, Dr. Finch, what is dial-up? So if you knew what dial-up was, yep, we're all getting old. But all right, so we are now living in what I would call a world of AI natives. So things are changing. And oh yeah, just a little bit more about me. I'm writing a book. I'm under contract with Kendall Hunt to have this book, From Fiction to Fact: Artificial Intelligence and Communication. There's a picture that's not there, but I have a class called Artificial Intelligence and Communication. I taught that last year, and then I'm teaching it again this year, and the book will actually be a companion to the class. And I've been kind of approached by another publisher to write a Christian companion. So that's going to be a secular book. But I have a Christian companion book that I'd like to write with it. AI is affecting everything. We're not even going to spend much time on that slide, but I wanted to show you, I don't know if you've heard of Nano Banana. So Nano Banana is Google Gemini and Google Studio. And Nano Banana is this new visual tool where you can do amazing design work from verbal prompts or by combining images. And actually, sometimes combining images becomes the most powerful way to use Nano Banana. So I had an exercise where the students could either create an advertisement. So this is in an advertising class, an advertisement for an energy drink, or an advertisement for a shoe, or an advertisement for a watch. So in one class period, so if any of you use Photoshop and InDesign and all of the Adobe suite, you can imagine how long it would take to make those cans and to put the texture on them and to put the pictures on them and to have it curved and the lighting and everything. Well, those images we got done in less than an hour, probably about a half an hour to 45 minutes. And then they created an entire campaign in one class period for an energy drink aimed at working moms. And it was actually pretty brilliant. So that's just one example of what you can do with artificial intelligence. And then here's a second example. So this was the group that ended up doing a shoe. And this is all from prompts. So I think I don't even know if they found an image of that woman or if they made the woman and then applied it to these prompts to make this EcoStride, the concept that they had, product concept that they had for that particular ad. So both of those happened in one class. So these tools are really, really powerful now. Just a year ago, when I was working with AI, you couldn't do these kinds of things. But Google's Gemini and then the ChatGPT products like Sora, they're amazing. So, and actually one more thing, and I can't bring this up to slide by slide, but so on the left there, you can see the original photo. So I took, using Nano Banana, I just found a table with no people at it. And interestingly, that first table is in an Asian house. So it's got the Lazy Susan. And if you look at some of the scrolling on the chairs and when I put it into to Nano Banana in Google Gemini, the interesting thing was it actually read the picture and noticed that these chairs and this whole setting was Asian. And so it put an Asian family having Thanksgiving dinner. So the prompt was, please put a family having Thanksgiving dinner around this table. And there you go. You've got a family having an Asian family in an Asian home. Another one here, I used an American home and had the same prompt, put a family having Thanksgiving dinner around the table. And for those of you who are into design, you can notice that it actually laid out the people in such a manner that the kids are on this side, these two chairs are empty, so you can actually see the whole family. So just amazing how it had that design sense, and then even that sense to understand the photo, to read the photo and know the kind of people to put in it. A year ago, you could probably just get one person in a photo. These tools struggled with even having an individual person. So I strongly recommend, and actually Nano Banana, for those of you who are into Adobe, Nano Banana has now been integrated into the Adobe suite. I haven't played with that, but so I don't know how the integration is working, but I've seen that that's happening. All right, so now rewinding a little bit, those were just some examples, but I want to give you guys a little bit of like just a taste of what I would call media ecology, but how communication technology affects culture. And I think this is something that's really useful. And actually this section, so that last section I used for the American Advertising Federation, this section actually I presented to the entire university here at our colloquium. This is talking about how the medium changes like what we use for communication changes the way we communicate, even with God. And you're like, wait a second, no, Dr. Finch, what are you talking about? Well, I'm going to show you. So if you go back in time, and even in the Bible, as represented by the Bible, when you go all the way back to Adam and Eve, how did God relate to Adam and Eve? He was oral with them. So this guy McLuhan came up with these different epics. So the first one he called the tribal epic, or the oral epic. And the only medium during this time was speech. And so the world was oral, the world was experiential, the world was immersive, real time, communal. And God communicated in that way. So he spoke to Adam and Eve, he walked with them, he interacted with them, he called them, he made a burning bush, he had symbols and things like that as they were getting into the literate epic. So, and I'm going through these really fast, so I want to make sure that we have time for everything. But so the literate epic, text comes into the picture, but pretty much the wealthy elites have text and the masses are illiterate still. So all of a sudden, though, you have visual, linear, abstract culture beginning. And so you have the Greek philosophers, the Roman government systems, and then you have the church after Christ, which ends up becoming a highly hierarchical church that kind of lords over its people. And you have the priests and the Romanists, as we talk about in some of our literature. So, but what happened? How did God change with print? So wait, God changed? No, he didn't change, but he changed how he communicated to us. So print comes into the picture, and he uses his own finger and writes the Decalogue, right? He writes commandments, which actually Exodus 20 and 31. But he has people write the law on their doorposts, recordings of prophecy, and we begin to have the word. And then of course John 1 in the beginning was the word, and the word became flesh. So I personally think our minds are programmed to interface best with print. It's the right pace for our brains. When we get past print, we start to outpace ourselves a little bit, and so we have to then rewind a little bit. But God had a special affinity for this era. But the church changed too. So you had liturgy, interpretation, hierarchy, and divided worship, where you had the masses and then the priests. Then we get to the print epic. So I'm teaching you. So I'm a professor. It's what I do. But the print epic, the medium is the printed text. So you had the printing press. The printing press comes out with, we have the Gutenberg Bible and Gutenberg that develops that. And what starts to happen? Well, the medium print is democratized. So no longer can information be held up in the higher echelons, so all of a sudden power structures begin to dissolve, and all of a sudden you start to have democracy. Personal access to scripture begins. And so all of a sudden the way that people interact with their faith changes a little bit. So we have expository teaching sermons instead of ritualistic experiences. So, you go back a couple hundred years from this period into the Dark Ages, really. And how did people experience God then? Through rituals, through the sacraments. But now, all of a sudden, we have expository teaching sermons and hymnals and yes, democratized nations, countries, but that democratized our churches. And so we got committees. So, you win some, you lose some. But and this was the era actually that White came onto the scene, and she had some really interesting things to say about this. So the press is a powerful means to move the minds and hearts of the people. God has placed at the command of his people advantages in the press, which combined with other agencies will be successful in extending the knowledge of the truth. So she was definitely not afraid of using this. It was slightly old technology at that point, but it was the leading technology. And actually, from my understanding, there are recordings of her wanting to use, electronic technologies as well. And so that was something that was cutting edge. She didn't mind. She wanted, the streams of light to go out to the world. Then we get to the electronic epic. So the electronic epic came after the print epic. And this is, I would say that it was constant, like the television era is sort of the what you can think about when you're thinking about this. And it put us back to this immersive moment where you're in an experience, but it was a mass experience. So we all back in the 90s and 80s experienced the same TV show at the same time. These days, you only have that with sports pretty much. But it was emotionally immersive, image based. So, Kennedy won the election because he was a positive image president. And faith expressions change too. For better or worse. We can discuss that. I'm not having any moral judgments on the change. I'm just saying that things changed. So you had the rise of televangelism. You had image-driven churches and mass revivalism. And so there actually were revivals that took place during this time in this mass culture. And worship style started to change too. So all of a sudden, things became more entertainment focused and experiential and emotional instead of logical and rational. So during the print epoch, when people primarily thought through text, it was very logical, very rational, and a bit more linear, but it was self-owned. Here, it's a bit more group oriented and experiential. And the different buildings changed as you went through time. So here we have an Orthodox church there with the iconostasis and all of the paintings, and people worshiped through looking at those things, and then through, again, the sacraments, through an experience there. But then here with the sort of classic Protestant church there with the pews, a classic Protestant church like that, if you look at it from above, if you think about this, it actually reflects a book. It looks like a book. And then when you get to the television, the electronic epoch, it starts to look like a concert. It looks like entertainment, and that sort of is the medium. So we'll just kind of go through that. But something that a person named Neil Postman said in more words than this, that I've summarized: technologies are not just tools, they're environments. As our media changes, so does our concept of the truth and of self. But what happens to the medium not only delivers information, but begins to shape what it means to be human. Now, it doesn't shape the truth with a capital T, but it starts to shape how we interact with that truth, how we interact with even our faith identity. All right, so now we went into the digital epoch, which we're already leaving, and this is pretty crazy. So digital epoch, you have smartphones and the internet, and things start to converge. You have algorithmic, hyper-personal communication, microcultures and niche identities start to emerge. And it's always on, always streaming. So faith expressions, the church never caught up to this one. So there are a lot of different forms that went into the electronic epoch, the megachurch maybe being sort of the classic sort of consummation of that moment. But here, the church didn't adjust. And so now I'm starting to see some churches adjust to this, but it's a really hard one for the church to adjust to, because the technology, while it brings us together globally and gives a lot of opportunity for communication, it also separates us physically. And I think, there's a huge impetus for communion, for direct communication in Scripture. So this one was a really hard one. And actually, there are graphs that as smartphone use increased, church attendance decreased on an equal and opposite reaction. So it's pretty intense how difficult this technology was for the church. But with that said, it's the tool that's there. It's shaping people and shaping how they think. And so the church, does need to grapple with that. And so we have digital missionaries out there who are trying to really reach this generation. But now we're entering into something new. So you had the oral, the literate, the print, the digital, and this new epoch that I'm still working on a name for, and probably somebody, more prominent than I will be the one who gets to name this. But the ambient intelligence epoch is something that we're moving into. So this is a world where intelligence is embedded in the environment itself, adaptive, invisible, responsive, and omnipresent. Creepy, but yeah, that's where we're headed. I mean, that's where we kind of are. Is that AI is ubiquitous. It's in all kinds of things that we're using. So AI is atmosphere, is sort of the idea. It's a pervasive, context-aware situation, always on personalization. Alexa, turn the lights on, or hey Google, whatever. And so you have adaptive environments, games, feeds, assistants, invisible mediation, shaping identity and culture, and the world becomes the interface. So within this epic emerges this idea of the co-intelligent self. And I would say that this next generation is going to be growing with artificial intelligences. So no longer will technology only be a tool, which they already were using social media as a part of an identity representation and formation tool. Like their identity was mixed with social media, but now they're going to be going through formative years interacting with semi-sentient. It's not exactly sentient, it's algorithms, but technology where it's living with a co-intelligence. So identity is co-authored by human intention and ambient AI feedback. All right. So what's AI to us vintage humans? Well, older generations relate to AI through narrative memory, not through lived experience. So we think in terms of movies with the Terminator, HAL, Short Circuit and Wall-E, Star Trek, The Matrix. These different things in our memory end up being what shape how we look at artificial intelligence. And so this gives us, I've come up with 4 different categories. Artificial intelligence as a tool, artificial intelligence as a threat, AI as an opportunity, and AI as a novelty. And so this is different from how Gen Z and Gen Alpha see things. Younger respondents view AI as a part of normal life, and older respondents find it as a force entering society. So this is a massive change. They're going to be growing up in this as a part of the environment, like Postman said. And that's a video that we can't watch. So youth are already living with AI, and I have some statistics here that I'll go through quickly because I want to get to the next thing. But 79% of Gen Z has used generative artificial intelligence tools. 79%, and that was probably earlier in 2025. This says 58% of teens had used AI for schoolwork, and that was in 2024. I'm here at Southern, and kind of sadly, I'm seeing a decent percentage of students using AI to complete assignments. And they don't seem that it's such a natural thing that they don't necessarily see an ethical issue there. So one of the things that we need to do is teach our young people that it's unethical to do what is known as cognitive offloading. Offloading your thinking to something else. And I could give you more here, but AI, they're growing up with AI. So AI is not entering their world, they're growing up inside it. And one other thing that I'll mention for the younger generation is actually they're growing up sometimes, not always, obviously. Some people don't allow their kids to have any technology, but when you're talking about American culture as a whole, gaming actually is Gen Alpha and Gen Z, but more Gen Alpha's third place is what scholars call it. And so they're socializing, they're doing commerce, they're living in games. They actually are more likely to socialize with their friends in game worlds than they are to socialize with friends in real life. It's much more common for kids to be to visit online than to visit face to face. AI is reshaping identity, emotion, and social behavior. And a few more statistics. 1 in 3 teens use AI for companions for emotional support, practice conversations, and social rehearsal. And significant proportions say AI conversations are as satisfying or more satisfying than human ones. And this sort of correlates with Gen Z and millennials as they interacted with influencers on social media. They saw influencers as people they could trust, even though it was what's called a parasocial relationship, not a real relationship, but they could trust them. They see it as a judgment-free zone. And again, they're optimistic about these things. So they live in this. So what do they expect from the world around them? So this changes what they expect on how they're interacting with the world. And so they expect a personalized, adaptive, and co-created world. So now, how is that going to change how they interact with the church? So Gen Alpha will be the first generation to learn, play, create, and socialize inside AI-enabled environments, from games to actual LLMs. So ChatGPT, Gemini, those kinds of things. And so they're going to be intertwined with generative artificial intelligence. And that's another video that uses some of these principles. But to sum it up with what Gen Z and Gen Alpha, like how they might be shifting, and this is postulation, but they might see the world through a lens that everything should adapt to me. So when you're in a game, the difficulty adapts to where you're at. So I remember going out and shooting hoops with my son, and he is allowed to use video games some. I limit his screen time. And this can happen to any kid, but he shot a few shots and he was missing and he got discouraged more quickly. And he was used to a gaming world where if he missed the shot, the basket would proverbially come closer. So in his mind, like having something that takes a little bit more practice, a little bit more effort sometimes is difficult. They want adaptive reality. Everything should personalize. So they're used to their Spotify account, their YouTube feed, all of these different things adapting to them. So of course, the church should adapt to me, or that kind of thing. Everything should co-create. So I am a co-creator with reality. And that changes how authority structures are seen and lots of other things. Everything should respond instantly. That really started happening during the social media era, and then everything should feel like a game. So everything is gamified, everything has levels, and I'm going to, incrementally work my way forward. And game language actually works for a lot of metaphors, if we're thinking about life. But that's kind of, these are massive changes. Like that's not how people interacted in my generation. And so this is a real change. So, all right. I'm going to skip some of this and get to my 10 levels of prompting. So this is practical stuff, and we're going to focus on just one level of prompting, but I want to give you some of the depth of where you can go with this stuff. So here are my 10 levels of prompting. And to be perfectly honest, I came up with 6 levels of prompting. And then I interacted with artificial intelligence to come up with 4 more. And so I don't know if they were mine or ChatGPT's, but iteratively, as I interacted, we talked through and decided that there were more. So the first one is just conversation. So when you first go into an AI, you see it more like a search engine. You want to just ask it something and have it give you something back. But you also might talk to it just like you would a human. They're not human. They're a probability matrix. And so they're trying to predict how you would like them to respond. But that natural talk actually helps train them as to your particular arc. So the second level, and this is the level that we're going to talk about in a minute, is structured prompting. So structured prompting, there are different acronyms. So you'll find a lot of them out there. And in a minute, we're going to look at the acronym TRACY. But this is giving several different elements that give particular instructions to the AI so that you can accomplish tasks. And so these can be useful for all kinds of different things. And I've seen at least 20 different structured prompts that are really like common, and I'm sure there are hundreds out there. Then the next one is what I would call prompt sequencing. So it's where you create a step-by-step workflow, and basically so AI actually only has a certain amount of sort of brain power. And so when you think like the AI, you might say, I'm going to first do this part of the project, then that, then that. Then there's co-creative prompting. And so co-creative prompting is where you go back and forth with the AI. So you iterate. And this, it kind of relates to the conversational, but this has a creative element to it. You're working on a project and you ask it questions, and then maybe you even ask it to ask you questions, and you wrestle with ideas. And it's actually a wonderful tool for wrestling with ideas, and using it as a tool to wrestle with ideas. Then critique prompting. So AI is naturally pretty positive, pretty, it wants to compliment you and agree with you. And so critique prompting is where you tell the AI to critique something. So you say, now I want you to find all of the flaws with this, or I want you to act as a critic and look at this. And one of the ways that a friend of mine used is he would have different characters from Harry Potter. And he said, be Malfoy, be Snape, be Dumbledore, and be Hermione, and analyze this according to those 4 characters, because they'd each have sort of a different take. Now, I'm not. He's a friend of mine professionally. He actually, we just did a presentation on AI together. So I'm just saying that not to endorse, but just to give an example. The other thing that you can do with this critique prompting is you can use multiple AI to check one another. So if you usually use ChatGPT, then you can switch over to Gemini, or you can use Claude, or one of the others. So that's using AI to critique whatever you're doing, and not just be positive and pushing you forward. The next one is my favorite one. And I've had so many people tell me AI isn't creative. It can't create anything. And my comeback would actually be, well, are we really creative? But what's the definition of creativity? So one definition of creativity is combining 2 or more things in a way that's never been done before. And artificial intelligence has like the knowledge of humanity in its brain. And so if you start to take different ideas and mash them together, AI has such an amazing capacity to go, oh, I like that. And then it can think of things you wouldn't even think of and combine them in novel ways. So I call that collision prompting. I actually learned this concept of collision in advertising. It's a creative method, but you can use AI to do collision prompting, combining fields for creativity. Then you get to constraint dense prompting, so using theories, rubrics, frameworks. So it's sort of the next level of structured prompting. And then cognitive augmentation, using AI to think more clearly. That was one that the AI came up with. I was like, do we really need an extra one for that? We talked about it a little bit. Anyways, won't take the time for that. Then I would actually say the next is in ChatGPT and in Gemini. They call them gems in Gemini, and in ChatGPT they call them bots, I believe. But you can create your own ChatGPT with its own constraints. So bot creation would be the next level. And then the last level is agentic systems. So when you create semi-autonomous AI assistants to do different things for you. And there's lots of different methods for that. Those are pretty advanced. This is sort of a progression from beginner to advanced with LLM prompting. So that's kind of cool. And we'll just keep going. And I'm actually going to skip some of this for the sake of time. But all right, let's look at structured prompting. So, just to be transparent here, if you're somebody who's big into AI, you see some little signs here that I used AI when I was putting this together. This is my ideation, a lot of my content, but the AI structured some of this. So I always tell my students, I'm like, oh yeah, I used AI for this. Absolutely. Then they'll ask me, well, how did you do that so that it was actually you? Longer conversation. But so structured prompting uses roles and then looks at the audience. Who are you doing this for? The task, the constraints, and the intent. And my very favorite, one of my favorite frameworks is the Tracy model. And so this is something that can be very useful to you. So Tracy stands for task. So what do you want it to do? Do you want it to give you a story, an outline, an email, a metaphor, an invitation? What? Then the role. So who should the AI be in this particular situation? Should they be a pastor? Should it be a pastor, a creative, a theologian, a teacher? The next one is audience. So who are you speaking to? Is this youth, adults, new believers, the general community? Constraints. So what length do you want? What tone? Is this something that deals with scripture? So if so, how are you treating that? Are there denominational values that you want clearly illustrated? Are you doing this for a news article, for a press release? So does this need to be AP style, that kind of thing? And then intent. So what is the goal? Are you trying to inspire, inform, clarify, invite, encourage, teach? And so just one example down there, act as a youth pastor. So that's the role, writing for high school students, your audience, create a 90-second story explaining grace using a sports metaphor, the task and intent. Keep the language simple, the tone warm, and it's sort of behind a thing here. And end with a clear takeaway, the constraints. So there's an example of using Tracy for an LLM. So a ChatGPT, a Grok, a Claude, one of those. So why does this matter? It protects voice, theology. You can define the tone, the values, the doctrinal boundaries, the pastoral warmth. And right now it really respects that. So if you give it boundaries, if you give it guardrails, then it will use those. That could change in the future. If it does, we have to really make sure that we're careful and watch these tools to make sure that we are running them. It saves hours. So this is something that can really be a time saver. And it creates clarity for your audience. So sometimes the structured prompts can help you focus on your particular audience and output. It builds confidence in using AI. So you start to really understand it. My wife just started using AI about 6 months ago, and I've been using AI since it came out pretty much. And she said, now I get all the things you've been talking about. So it just gets you using it and confident. And then you can apply these things to things like Sora or Vero or those different kinds of things. So your video outputs, your photo outputs can dramatically improve. So I actually had an exercise, and since I was actually thinking this was going to be something where I was interacting with you guys, I didn't realize it was going to be quite so autonomous. But if you want an exercise, a task might be you want to write a warm invitational description for your church's Christmas service that you're going to put in a newsletter or whatever. So you can ask the the AI to act as maybe the communication director. And then the audience, you can talk about whichever you're trying to send it to. The constraints, give me 120 words, or this is going in the, you want a warm tone, welcoming, not pushy, avoid theological depth, include service time and call to action. And then the intent, so encourage people to attend, build relational trust, that kind of thing. So you could take something like, okay, I want to create a promo for our Christmas service. And I'm going to go through this process and then have ChatGPT come up with something. Now, I always say, never settle with using an LLM. So if ChatGPT or one of the others gives you something, you still have to, I think of it as a graduate assistant. So if I give a graduate assistant a job, I very rarely don't even look at what they give me back. It's like, oh, did they do a good job? So you still have to ask that with ChatGPT or one of the others. And so, but that's, you still can do that kind of thing. So, and then a next step for this. So if we had taken the time to go through this together and you had started to do some and we could have talked about them, the next step would be to make a video with it, with either Sora or a VO. And so what you can then do is say you made that 120 word, script, you could take it over to a video software. And then you could say, I want this atmosphere and this emotion for the video, these visual elements. Or you could use it in, say, Nano Banana or one of the other image generators and describe a setting for you to put your 120 words on. So I'm very much in favor of using one AI to apply to another AI. And just an example of a prompt, create a 12-second warm and inviting Christmas video. This would be for one of the video softwares. Show a softly glowing church sanctuary with candles flickering and gentle snowfall seen through a window. Slow camera glide through the room using a peaceful and hopeful tone. Add soft text. Join us for Christmas on December 24th at 6 p.m. and don't include identifiable faces. So that would be something that you could use with a video software. All right. And yeah, for deeper, add camera angles, texture, diversity, symbolic elements. Artificial intelligence is not the enemy. Unexamined use is. It's a good gift, and we want to use this gift well. I'm just going to kind of say that there. Um, this, we can't see the top of this, but what I did here was I took the press that Ellen White was talking about and put AI in. And so God has placed the commands of his people advantages in the press, which combined with other agencies will be successful in extending the knowledge of the truth. God has placed at the command of his people advantages in AI, which combined with other agencies will be successful in extending the knowledge of the truth. God has permitted a flood of light to be poured upon the world in discoveries in science and art, but even the greatest minds, if not guided by the word of God, become bewildered in their attempts to investigate the relations of science and revelation. So my conclusion is, like all powerful tools, AI is an extremely powerful gift, but gifts in Scripture always come with responsibility. AI is not the enemy, but unexamined use is. And when I talk about students, I really get into this. The penalty of cognitive offloading means they're not developing their own brains. So if they're not using AI, it is it's guiding them instead of them guiding it. So AI is not the enemy, though. Unexamined use is. Let us not be used by this technology, but rather let us use it for the glory of God. And that's what I've got for the presentation for now. And let's see, that's probably plenty.
Yeah, there we go. Got my mic turned on there. Thank you, Dr. Finch. This is such a broad and deep topic that I'm sure we've just kind of just scratched the surface, on this tonight. But the statistics you bring up in the background is just fascinating to me. And I know there's going to be the question, can people get access to the PowerPoint later or something so they can examine some of those slides that you had shared that had quite a bit of information on that? So
yeah, I was flying through them. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, cool. So we'll make sure to get that from you and make sure that gets posted to our Georgia-Cumberland Conference website under the Communication Department Workshops section. And we'll be able to make that available there. Also, we've probably got questions that our viewers have, and we want to move into that right now. And there's one question that has come up that says, what are some of the realistic ways AI can help me speed up weekly tasks like announcements, social posts, or email newsletters? What would you say to that?
Yeah. Well, I just gave you one example using the Tracy prompt there. So depending on how long of a content that you're trying to create, but you can. So it's a little bit harder still, but you can create agents to do all kinds of things. So I'm playing with. I haven't yet let it free, but I'm playing with an AI that will put all of your emails into folders and give you recommended email responses for all of your emails that need responses. And so it determines based on your programming whether or not this is an email that you should respond to, or this is something that just needs to go into a junk file or whatever. So I'm messing around with things like that powerful. But just for an LLM, so a large language model, like a ChatGPT or a Grok or a Claude or one of those, they can be extremely powerful for repetitive tasks. So and then you can do design work with them. So I think that maybe the thing that it would speed up the very most would be if you have images that you want to create especially Gemini software that using the Gemini Nano Banana it's a weird name, but using that software to create images is just extremely fast. And so you can illustrate things very, very quickly. So it sort of depends, it can't necessarily populate your calendar. There are things that you have to contribute to it. But if you need a paragraph and you've only got a couple sentences, or if you need it's amazing at doing some things like that. Now, they still need to be edited. So AI tends to save you maybe a third of the time. that you would be using depending on the task. So, image generation, you could go to royalty-free sites and find images. They might not be as precise as what you would want. And so AI can really speed that up. So, yeah.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Another question. How do we balance not falling behind the times while maintaining the personal touch for church and worship? Can AI be integrated into a personal emotional experience?
There are churches that are using AI to do several different things for the worship service. There's an AI Jesus that's out there, and then I know that we have in the church. There's a group that is using 11 Labs as an AI for translation. To use as a translation software to be able to share with share messages around the world. And in a crazy way, now you can take that message and you can actually use an AI to make it look like you are speaking the other language. So there's 11 Labs. HeyGen is another one. So I actually have a video where I'm speaking Spanish and I don't speak Spanish. And I speak Chinese and I don't speak, so it looks like your mouth is actually moving according to the other language. So there's some pretty amazing things you can do there. Integrating it in other ways, I find it to be, some people find this dangerous, and so I understand that, respect that, but I use AI as a study tool, and I check it. Like I always, if I use any resources, so when I study Ellen White, actually, I say to it, I'd like you to give me feedback on X and give me linked sourced resources and justifications for your responses. And when you say linked and sourced, it does those. If you use Perplexity, it automatically gives you links. And so those can be useful tools for engaging with scripture and with teachings and prophecy and stuff like that. So those are useful tools. Integrating into the worship service, videos, actually now the video, I would say a year ago I would have said don't touch it with a 10-foot pole, but the video production is becoming pretty outstanding now. So if you've got Sora 2 or VO 3, those can create videos that you could use to illustrate different things for church.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Our next question. Can AI recreate or refine my PowerPoint presentation? What tool would you recommend?
There are two tools that are really good. So I have been using, and I think I'd only stuck with it because I started with it, but I've been using an app called Gamma. I didn't have time to do the one, but I have done some using it's gamma.ai, I think. I don't know, but Gamma. So if you search PowerPoint creating Gamma or something, or on Google, you'll probably find that. The other one is called beautiful.ai. And Beautiful actually now is integrated into PowerPoint. And so if you're creating something in PowerPoint, there's an option, or I might have actually linked it, but you can integrate those right into PowerPoint. You have to pay for those, like about 10, I think Gamma is $10 a month. And Beautiful might be more. That might be why I went with Gamma in the beginning. I think Beautiful's a little bit more beautiful, but they're both very good, and they will create the images. They'll put your content in order. They'll do all kinds of amazing things at the push of a button. For a recent conference, I wrote a conference paper, and I dropped a conference paper into Gamma, and it created a PowerPoint for me, illustrated it, everything in a couple minutes.
Cool. Yeah, it's something that I've seen demonstrated. It's pretty fascinating how that works. It could be a real-time saver.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Should we be playing into the adaptive reality of the youth as they engage with AI? Or should we be encouraging fewer adaptive realities in real life to stimulate that cognitive development? It's a more technical question here.
Absolutely. I think that to the degree possible, we should be helping our kids to interact in the real world, IRL, in the real world. The um, real world interactions are at the pace are more at the pace of their brain's development. And so I say all those things about AI affecting culture. I know that a lot of our families, don't allow any screen time. My brother doesn't like his kids, didn't have screen time until they were well into their teen years. And so that's amazing. I think that's very commendable. Australia just put the restriction on social media for kids, and so these kinds of things can be really really useful, really powerful for their brain development. But for those, I also don't judge people who do. And so if your kid is playing games, and if they are interacting in those worlds, like game worlds are embedded with artificial intelligence now. If they're playing Roblox, or if they're playing um, Minecraft, or gosh, what's the one that I'm trying to think of? The most common one for young teens these days. But if they're playing one of those games, like, they're in artificial intelligence worlds already, and so they have a more thin veil between digital and real world, and I think they long for real world, and so that's something, we need to be careful of the dopamine that they get. It's literally sort of a drug effect on their brains that dulls them to interacting with the world, when they experience too much flashy, immediate gratification content. And so that's something to be really careful of. And so I mean, I have no idea if this is the right thing to do or not, but I have screen time limits, so that's how I try to play the middle. I could be wrong. I say that with real humility and not judging people who are more absolutist in one way, or who are more permissive in the other. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a follow-up question for that probably won't be on screen, but AI promises many things, just like other technologies that have come along have made large promises about how it will save us time and improve our productivity and allow us to create new things and invent new things that we wouldn't have thought of before. But what would you say to, again, some of the cautionary tales that go along with AI? What would you say that people should be thinking about and guarding against when using AI? And I'll give you an example of that. Should I be, let's say I'm working with a church and I've got a bunch of names, addresses, and emails and phone numbers and other sensitive information, and I'm wanting to design a church directory. Should I be uploading that to AI to help me with that project?
Oh, absolutely not. Only use AI for things that are what I would call outward facing. So if it's public information, then you can use it with AI. If it's something that's private, then be really careful. So yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, we didn't get into ethics at all.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
many thoughts. For developmental thought, using it to offload things cognitively can really stunt creativity, I would say. You start leaning on it, it becomes a crutch instead of a creative tool. But as long as you keep it, as long as sort of you're the one using it as a tool, it can be phenomenal. Like, I would say that it gives you an exponential ability to get things done. And when you start doing those, like integrations where you start, mashing ideas together, collisions rather, and things like that, like, and you start iterating with the AI, and it gets to understand your perspective almost. Like, it is pretty amazing what you can do and how quickly you can do things. So I'll let's see. I recently, when I was working on the presentation for advertising, I was using ChatGPT and I was iterating with ChatGPT, and it for like, I didn't ask it. So in advertising, there's this thing called psychographic segmentation. And I'm sure I've talked about psychographic segmentation in a previous prompt somewhere where we were doing something for a class where I was teaching psychographic segmentation. But in this particular conversation, I had not mentioned that at all. And so I was talking about like how I could, what would I have to offer for these professional advertisers as I'm, a professor. So long story short, it just offered me a psychographic. It said, here is an artificial intelligence informed psychographic tool that had these different spectrums that you could employ. And I was like, I didn't ask for that. That's brilliant. That's really, really good stuff. So I told it that, and then we iterated more. But it's when you really, like, when you start interacting with it and you start sort of getting a feel for the back and forth iterative nature of the tool, and you don't just accept its outputs and kind of leave them, then it can become a real amazing creative tool. So that's my favorite thing to do with LLMs.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're about out of time. I think we probably have time for just one more question, if there's one other question that'll come up. But let's go with this one. Is it okay for churches to use AI-generated images, and what guidelines should we follow in doing that?
Yeah, I say absolutely. These days, so depending on the tool you use, the AI-generated image will have different legal boundaries. So if you're using Midjourney, which Midjourney tends to be the best AI to create faces, but Midjourney, technically speaking, you don't own that material. So everything created by Midjourney is open source. So technically anybody could use that. And the way people get around that is they have their own private folders, and their own private folders make it so that nobody knows that you used that Midjourney to create it. And so you can kind of claim it. But because it was trained on public information, it's not owned. But if you're using other software like the Adobe software, Firefly, it's only trained on proprietary images, and so those you can use without even thought. But if it's just in a church service, I would say, feel free. If you're doing something that's going to be very, very public facing, that tens or hundreds of thousands of people will see, and you could potentially face legal pressure, then think about the tool that you're using to make it. But yeah, I think that they're really great tools for using for illustrating different things, especially Nano Banana. It's amazing.
Cool. Well, that's terrific. Well, Dr. Michael, I want to thank you so much for the time you've taken to present this information. And I want to thank each of the people who have come online, either through StreamYard, Facebook, YouTube, that have joined us this evening. A couple quick things. First of all, this has been a production of the Georgia-Cumberland Conference and the Kentucky-Tennessee Conference Communication Departments. And I want people to know that if they're struggling with AI or have more questions, or simply want to know, hey, I have this project, or I want to know how AI can help, hey, we're here to answer further questions and to give guidance, and also help along the way, and to also share what we've learned and what has worked for us, and some of the things that we found that we, again, need to be careful of when using it, and things that need to be taken into consideration. So I want to throw out my email address. It's richardr@gccsda.com. I'm with the Georgia-Cumberland Conference, and also Paola, who's with the Kentucky-Tennessee Conference. You want her email address, and it's pmora@kytn.net. And also, we want to know what would be most helpful for you for future workshops. We want to know if there's certain topics that you would find interesting. And we also want to know if this format is working, or if a different format would be better. And so we've got a QR code. You'll find it up there in the upper left-hand corner that you can hit with your phone, or if you look in the comments, you'll see a link to a short survey. We'd really encourage you to fill that out and give us your feedback on this seminar and what you would like to see in the future. But with that, there's one other thing, and that's the Facebook group. It's for worship, people that are involved in worship technology like church AV or church communication people. We have a Facebook group that we would love for you to join, be a part of. It's just one more place where we can collaborate and share ideas and information. And I could see that being used to share different AI tools and use cases for those tools. That'd be a nice place to post some information like that. And so that, I believe we have a slide for that, if you want to pull that one up. It's our Facebook group. You'll see a QR code for that. And also there'll probably be a link for that you'll see in the chat. So with that, let's go ahead and close with a word of prayer, and we'll let you all go. So let's bow our heads and pray. Father in heaven, we thank you so much for this time we've been able to share together. And with each technology that's come along, there's obviously been an adjustment that's needing to take place. And with AI, it's here to stay, and it's a part of the world. People are interacting with it, they're being affected by it. And so we just pray, help us to understand it better, how to utilize it in creative and safe ways and constructive ways, that we can use this tool and this technology to further the gospel commission and taking this message to the world. We thank you for Dr. Finch and his work in the School of Journalism at Southern Adventist University, and we pray you would bless him and bless the school as they're preparing the next generations in the work that you've called each of us to do. And we thank you for hearing our prayer and for blessing us this evening. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, well, that's all for now. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to next time. All right, goodbye.